Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to figure out triads using this tool over here called the Chord tool, also known as the Trail of Fun. I'm not exactly sure why it's called the Trail of Fun, and I'm not really sure who came up with the idea to call it the Trail of Fun, but I've heard it called the Trail of Fun. So first I should explain what a triad is. A triad is a chord with three notes. So this covers things like our C minor chord we have here, or C major, or C diminished, or C augmented. It does not cover things like seventh chords, like our D7 here. So our major 7 chords, minor 7 chords, diminished, half diminished, those sorts of things. So the way the Trail of Fun works is basically you take the C major scale, which is just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and you arrange it in this order. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B. You can just draw that out on a piece of paper. And then above those columns of notes that you've created, the first column is major, so C, F, and G are major. D, E, and A are minor, and B is diminished. Now, that doesn't mean that B chords can't be something other than diminished. It just means that the natural quality of a B chord, when you draw it on the staff with no sharps or flats on it, is diminished. Just like C, when you write a C chord with no sharps or flats on it, it's naturally major. The other thing we have to understand here are our types of chords. We basically have 4 different types of triads. We have augmented, major, minor, and diminished. Augmented chords typically are shown with like a plus sign next to them or just AUG next to them. Major chords are just written with a capital letter, so like just a capital C would be C major. Sometimes you can put a capital M next to it as well. It'll basically mean the same thing. For minor chords, there's typically going to be a lowercase m or like a dash next to the chord. And then diminished chords have a little degree symbol next to them. And the other thing you have to figure most of these out is this hierarchy of chords. So augmented being the highest, then major, minor, and then diminished being the lowest. And what this is going to do is it's going to show us which notes we need in the chord we need to alter in order to get from one chord to another. So if we need to go from major to diminished, that means I'm going to have to go from major, lower the third of the chord, lower the fifth of the chord, and then we'll get to diminished. Likewise, if I wanted to go from minor to augmented, we'd have to raise the third and then raise the fifth to get up to augmented. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then down at the bottom here, I just have some example chords, just the way they would be written on the staff. So C is just C major is just capital C. C minor, C little m, C degree symbol would be diminished, and C plus would be augmented. All right, so let's go back up to our Trail of Fun here. Like I said before, the Trail of Fun basically shows you the natural quality of these 7 chords. And that basically means that when I write a C chord with no sharps or flats on it, it's going to be C major. So the first thing, one of the other things we need to understand before we start doing this is that triads are always, unless they're inverted, are always written as a series of stacked thirds. So if I start with this C here, the next note up is going to have to be E, a third up, and then a G. So your triads, as long as they're not intervals, they're going to be line, 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 or space, space, space. For example, here's another one. If I start here on F, that's going to be our F triad, space, space, space. So what we can get from these 2 triads right now, just by looking at the Trail of Fun, is that this chord here with C on the bottom as its tonic note, as the root or whatever you want to call it, the CEG chord is C major, because the natural kind of resting note arrangement of a C chord is C major. Likewise, this one with F on the bottom, FAC, is an F chord because there's no sharps or flats. But if we start working with some of these other chords like D, E, A, or B, for example, if I start on E and then stack 2/3 on top of that, this is actually a E minor chord, because an E, G, B chord with no sharps or flats in it, according to the Trail of Fun, is a minor chord. And the same thing would apply for D and A. And then lastly, if I create a chord that starts on B and then we stack 2/3 on top of it, is a B diminished chord because that's under the diminished column. So again, all of these chords in the Trail of Fun refer to kind of the resting arrangement of notes for these chords. It doesn't mean that you can't have a B major chord or a D major chord or an F minor chord. It just means that we have to alter the chord to get to that. And you'll also notice that there's no column for augmented because no chord is naturally augmented. Okay, so let's say we want to find a C minor chord. Well, C is not under the minor column, so we're going to have to alter the chord in some way to get to C minor. So basically what you do is you just start with your kind of just your stock triad here. Just C, E, G. Let me just zoom in a bit so you can see this better. There we go. So C, E, G. So we know, according to our Trail of Fun, because there's no sharps or flats here, that this is a C major chord. To make this minor, we have to go down to our hierarchy of chords here, and we have to determine where we need to go with it and where we are. So we know we have a C major chord, and we know we want to go to minor. So what we have to do is we have to lower the chord. And the way we do that is we lower the third. So to go from major to minor, we lower the third note of the chord, the third. By the way, you can think of this as root, third, fifth. The fifth is the top note, the third's the middle note, the root's the bottom note. So in order to lower a note, if the note is natural like it is here, you add a flat to it. If we were going to raise a note, we'd have to add a sharp to it. If we were going to raise something with a flat already on it, we'd raise it to a natural. And if we were going to raise a sharp that's already sharped, you have to double sharp it. And if you were to lower a flat that's already flat, you'd have to double flat it. So that is our C minor chord right there. So we just went from major to minor by lowering the third of the chord. Let's try another one. Let's say I want B major. So what we do is we start off with our B chord. Whoops. Hang on. Sibelius is freaking out on me. There we go. So I just have a B, D, F chord, no sharps, no flats. And so according to our chord tool over here, we know that B is in the diminished column. So this is a B diminished chord. So if I want to go from B diminished to B major, I'm going to have to start down here at the bottom on diminished, go up to minor, and then go up to major. So now it's a two-step process. So in order to go from diminished to major, I have to raise the fifth, then raise the third, and it'll transform this chord into a major chord. So in order to raise a note that's natural, like this, like our D here, we're going to sharp it. Same thing with the F up here. So let's start with the fifth. We need to raise the fifth, so we'll sharp it. And then next we need to raise the third. And now we have a B major chord, as opposed to a B diminished chord. Let's do one more like this, and then we'll do some harder ones. For let's say I want to go from, let's say I want a G diminished chord. So let me just start with the G, stack 2/3 on top of it. There we go. According to our Trail of Fun, G is under the major column. So this stock chord here is G major. So to go from major down to diminished, I'm going to have to lower the third, then lower the fifth. So we find the third, which is B, lower it to B flat, find our fifth, which is D, and lower it to D flat. And now we have our G diminished chord. And there we go. Now, that covers most chords except for chords that start where the root is sharped or flatted. For instance, we know how to figure out F, but do we know how to figure out F sharp? We know how to figure out B, but how do we figure out B flat? Well, it's actually quite simple. Let's say that I want to figure out what a E flat minor chord is. Well, you still use the E, and we still use the minor column to start. So E flat chord. So let's just create our kind of stock E chord. The only difference between E minor, which is what we have right here, again, according to the Trail of Fun, E's in the minor column, and E flat minor, is that all of the notes in E flat minor are flat. That's the only difference. So basically, you can take an E minor chord and add a flat to every note in that chord, and you end up with E flat minor. Likewise, since it's a really uncommon chord, at least written this way, but if I sharped all three notes, now I have E sharp minor. Most people would just prefer to use F minor instead of E sharp minor, but that's another way to think about it. And this works for all of these. So for instance, let's say I want an an F sharp major chord, or let's not use F sharp. Let's use C. So let's take a C chord here, C E G, and again, according to our trail of fun over here, C is under the major column, so this is C major. So if I sharp all of the notes in my C major chord, I now have C sharp major. Likewise, if I flat all of the notes, I have C flat major. Now that's a pretty simple concept, but what if I wanted C sharp, and instead of major, C sharp minor, or C sharp diminished, or C flat minor, or something along those lines? Well, then we're going to have to, implement a few more steps here. So let's say that the chord we're looking for is C sharp minor. So we want a C sharp minor chord. We still start with our C major chord. So C, E, G. Then what we have to do is add sharps to everything. We just start with all sharps. So now what we have is a C sharp major chord. Now we have to take our C sharp major chord and go down to C minor, or C sharp minor rather. So what do? Well, let's go look at our hierarchy of chords here. To go from major to minor, you have to lower the third to go down to minor. So how do we lower an E sharp here? Well, you just take the sharp away. Like I said before, if you have a natural note to raise it, you sharp it. If you have a natural note to lower it, you flat it. If you have a sharp note already and you need to raise it, you have to double sharp it. And in our case, we need to lower this sharped note, so we're going to just remove the sharp. We're technically flatting it, but we're not actually adding a flat to it. We're just lowering it down from E sharp to E. We're lowering it down a half step. So we lower our third, and now we have C sharp, E, G sharp, which is a correctly spelled C sharp minor chord. Let's do another one. Let's say that we want A flat major, A flat major. So I'm just going to write the chord up here, A flat major. There we go. We still, just like with our C minor example, we still start with the root note. So we're going to start with an A chord. A, C, E. Again, according to our trail of fun, A is under the minor column. So this chord is A minor right now. So to make it A flat, let's put a flat on everything. So now we have A flat minor. So now we have to go from minor to major. So to go from minor to major, we go up. So we raise the third. So our C flat here, to raise a flat, you just make it natural. You take away the flat. So we take away the flat, and now we have A flat, C, E flat. We raised C flat to C, and now we have an A flat major chord. Let's do a more difficult one. Let's say I wanted B flat augmented. B flat augmented. There we go. Well, it's a B flat chord. It's a B. The root is the root note beside the flat is B. So we still use the B in the trail of fun, but B is diminished. So we're really going to have to do a lot to this to alter the chord. So let's start with just our stock B chord, BDF, which is B diminished according to the trail of fun. Let's add a flat to everything. Now what we have is B flat diminished. And in order to go from diminished up to augmented, we're going to have to raise the fifth, raise the third, and then raise the fifth again. So let's try that. So let's raise the fifth, F flat becomes F natural. Raise the third, D flat becomes D natural. Raise the fifth again, so F becomes F sharp. And there we go. That's B flat augmented. So hopefully this has helped you with creating triads. You can basically figure out any triad this way. This even works for double sharped and double flatted chords. You know, if you ever happen to stumble across a C double sharp minor chord, you can still use this. This method to figure out that chord. And again, this only works for triads, for 3-note chords, but you can figure out any triad with this method. All right, so if you want a copy of this tool, what I'll do is I'll just kind of leave it up here on the screen, and I'll zoom in on just these top two kind of parts here. And you know, if you really want a copy of it, you can just kind of do a screen capture of it. If you're on a Mac, you can do like a Shift Command 3 or a Shift Command 4 to do a screen grab of it. If you're on a PC, I believe it's the last time I used a PC was like 7 years ago regularly. I think it's Control Alt Print Screen, then you have to copy or paste it into Paint. So I'll just leave this here for a few seconds so you can get a screen grab of that for your own reference.